Hey everyone, I'm Manero here, and in this video I'm going to explain in detail how I painted these lemons with gouache in Procreate. So let's jump right into it. In order to achieve this, I use my Natural Gouache brush set for Procreate. You can find it along with a free mini version for you to try out on my Gumroad page through the link in the top right corner of this video or in the description below. I also used this photo reference by Gareth Paul that I found on Unsplash. You can also find the link in the description below, in case you'd like to follow along. On my previous gouache tutorial, I explained how to set up your canvas with all the necessary textures that are included in this set. But for the sake of this tutorial, I have created a canvas with all the layers and textures already set up that will be included in this set from now on. If you already own this set, all you need to do is access your purchase and download the new canvas file. This canvas is ideal for you to jump right into painting. As I said, it includes all the necessary textures, starting by the paper texture, all the gouache consistency textures, all set up in the right order, with the clipping masks already arranged with their respective painting layers. I've also included a masking tape simulation to give you some nice and realistic edges in your paintings. In this tutorial I'm going to explain what I painted on each layer step by step. For this particular piece, I used the following brushes from my Natural Gouache set. Gouache Sketcher 2, Super Light Gouache 3, Medium Gouache, Irregular Flat, Spread Brush 3, and Directional Scatter 7. The first thing I did was to open the group of layers called Underpainting, and I selected the layer with the same name. This layer is attached to the tea consistency texture. In this layer, using the Super Light Gouache 3 brush, I painted the whole surface of the canvas. I chose purple for the underpainting because it's the complementary color to yellow, sitting opposite on the color wheel, which enhances their contrast. Since the lemons are yellow, using purple underneath will make the colors pop and harmonize beautifully. Notice that I didn't cover everything perfectly, but I purposefully did a sloppy job. Not covering everything perfectly really helps to achieve the traditional look. I also did this in one go without lifting my Apple Pencil. This prevented the strokes to overlap, which also helps the underpainting to feel less digital. By the way, you can see how the edges of the painting are automatically clean, thanks to the masking tape layers that I have set in the canvas. You can see the difference by hiding and showing the masking tape group. The next step was to select the sketch layer. Using the Gouache Sketcher 2 brush, I took my time on doing a sketch of the lemons, the bowl and its shadow over the surface. Notice how I wasn't afraid of erasing parts and redrawing them, and also using the selection and transform tools to adjust the proportions and placements of different parts of my drawing. I wanted to keep this sketch rough like this, so that I could use it as a guide to make a more refined sketch, now that I knew where everything would fall in place. To do that I lowered the opacity of my first sketch, and I created a new layer on top. Then I took my time to define everything better, even adding more details that I didn't sketch before. Notice that I also marked where some of the shadows would go. This helped me a lot later during the painting stage. I then turned off the rough sketch layer and I only left the new sketch visible. With the sketch finished, it was time to start painting. I opened the General Colors group, and I made sure to select the General Colors layer that is attached to the coffee consistency texture. Now in this layer, and using the medium wash brush, what I did was to put on the canvas all the basic colors that each part of my painting would need. Think of it as mapping where each color would go. Therefore, I would place colors all around the surface of my canvas, but making sure to not cover everything perfectly so that the underpainting layer would still show through. I'm saying this because you will see how as I progressed with the painting, on each new layer I would get more and more specific, each time painting or covering smaller areas than on the previous layers. Let me see if I can explain what I mean by this. The idea is that when we start a painting we will start covering large areas, painting more in general, and as we move forward, we go more and more into smaller areas, painting more and more specific until we reach the detailing stage, which will only cover very small and specific areas of the painting. When painting with my Natural Gouache set, each of these steps from painting more general to more specific is attached to one of the gouache consistency textures, starting with the more watery texture called tea, when painting very general, to the thicker texture called butter, when painting the final and smaller details. Think of it like building a multi-layered cake, where the cake is the whole painting. You have the larger layer at the bottom, which is the base. Then keep adding smaller and smaller layers on top, until you add the cherry on top. Each of these parts of the cake represent the area we cover with our brush strokes, on each layer in relation with the size of the canvas. I'm not sure I'm doing the best job at explaining this, but I hope you get the idea. Let's go back to the painting. I wanted to add some of that brushy texture in the table that I could observe in the reference, so I switched to the Spread Brush 3. This brush helped me add some of those finer strokes, following the direction of the table. Notice how I didn't overdo the thing. I didn't cover everything. Being subtle with these kind of effects is the best choice. I then switched back to the medium wash brush to soften some of those brushy strokes in the top left corner to give the impression that the picture was more out of focus in that corner. Using the Spread Brush 3 with the Smudge tool in Procreate, I was able to blend some of those strokes to soften things a bit more. I then moved to the layer called Main Subject, which is attached to the milk consistency texture. I switched to the irregular flat brush. The idea of this layer is to start building the colors of the main subject with thicker and more opaque brush strokes. Looking closely at the photo reference to know what colors to use is essential during the whole process. I would recommend not to use the color picker to grab colors directly from the reference, but to try and choose the colors yourself from the color wheel. This is the only way to train your eyes to perceive accurate colors with practice. At this stage I still didn't go into smaller details of the painting. In the spectrum from general painting to specific painting, I was right in the middle at this point. I also worked a little more on the shadow areas to add more richness of colors and deepen the shadows near the bowl. The next step was to move to the subject rendering layer, which is attached to the cream consistency texture. Now I was going to finally start painting the subject in more detail. I called this layer subject rendering because I feel it is where the rendering starts to make sense. The dark spots get darker, the areas touched by light get more vibrant and defined, the contrast gets built up, and the edges get sharper where they need to be in order to make the different objects feel like they are in the physical world. I was still not painting in full detail. I would leave the finest and more specific details for the final layer, but this was where the painting started to feel alive. Being on one of the thickest gouache consistency textures meant that I could go over a large area in the shadow of the ball and paint on top to simplify the amount of brush strokes, because I felt like previously it was too much. Sometimes it's okay to simplify things in areas that are not so important. I wanted the focus of the viewer to be on those lemons and not on the shadow area. At this stage I felt confident enough about the progress of my painting that I decided to hide my sketch layer, as I felt I didn't need it anymore. Another way to simplify things is to use the smudge tool to blend some of the edges of the brush strokes away, like you can see me do here. Here's a fun part. I switched to the directional scatter 7 brush, and on the same subject rendering layer, I painted a few strokes on the interior and exterior of the ball, giving little hints at the grainy texture that the ball has in the photo reference. But notice that I didn't overdo this at all. A handful of brush strokes can go a long way at giving the impression of texture. Then for the final step, I moved to the final details layer, which is attached to the butter texture, the thicker gouache consistency texture there is. In this layer, the whole point is to give the very last finishing touches, those final details that will make the painting really stand out. It is important to be very mindful at how many strokes we paint and where. Here's where we would paint our lightest and darkest brush strokes, only in those places that really need them, for highlights and for the deeper shadows. And this is the final result. I really hope you liked this video. If you use my brushes and post your art on social media, feel free to use the hashtag Manero brushes so that I can see what you create. I will be extremely happy to share your creations with my audience. Don't forget to subscribe for more art related videos and give me a thumbs up. Also, make sure to check out my Gumroad page, where you will find the Natural Gouache brush set for Procreate and many other sets and freebies that I have available. I'm sure something will suit your artistic needs. All the links are in the description below. Okay, thank you for watching. See you next time.